When little Catherine Blackwood was born in the spring of 1869, the midwife dropped her the moment she opened her eyes. Those eyes were pale blue, almost colorless, with pupils that seemed to hold depths no infant should possess. They were identical to the eyes of Catherine's uncle Marcus, who had died in that very house 20 years earlier. The same Marcus who had been buried with his eyes sewn shut because no one could stand to look at them. Now those same eyes stared out from the face of a newborn child, and they were watching everything with the hungry intelligence of a man who had been waiting decades to see the world again. The Blackwood family had lived in their Gothic mansion outside Springfield for 3 generations. Built in 1847, the house stood on prairie land, transformed by railroad wealth into one of Illinois's most impressive estates. But the Blackwoods carried a curse that no amount of money could escape. Every generation produced one child who died young and violently. Catherine's grandfather lost his eldest son in a hunting accident. Catherine's father, William, watched his brother Marcus perish in a fire that consumed only the locked library where Marcus had been reading. The deaths were always sudden, always inexplicable, and always followed by years of strange occurrences. Marcus Blackwood had been 25 when he died in 1849. A brilliant but troubled man who studied occult texts and conducted experiments that neighbors whispered about. The fire started inside a locked room with no fireplace, no candles, no source of ignition. Witnesses heard Marcus screaming for minutes after the flames erupted, but his body was found sitting peacefully in his chair, unmarked by burns but completely lifeless. The strangest detail was his eyes. In death, they had turned pale blue, almost white, with pupils that reflected light even in darkness. The undertakers sewed them shut because anyone who looked directly into them felt dizzy and disoriented. After Marcus's burial, the house became a place of whispers and shadows. Servants saw a tall figure moving through hallways at night. Books in the library rearranged themselves into painful patterns. Family members experienced dreams where Marcus spoke about returning home and reclaiming what belonged to him. William tried to escape by moving away, but eventually returned with his wife Eleanor to care for aging parents. They avoided having children for years, afraid of continuing the cursed bloodline. But Eleanor wanted a family, and in 1868 she convinced William their child would be different. Their child would be safe. They were wrong. Catherine's birth was traumatic. Eleanor labored for 2 days, and the midwife reported the baby seemed reluctant to be born. When Catherine finally emerged, she was silent. No crying, no movement. Just those unsettling pale blue eyes staring with uncomfortable focus. Mrs. Henderson had delivered dozens of babies, but never saw an infant with such aware, calculating eyes. When she tried to clean Catherine, the baby's gaze followed her movements with adult precision. Most newborns couldn't focus for weeks, but Catherine saw everything with perfect clarity. "She's got her uncle's eyes," Mrs. Henderson whispered, and Eleanor's blood went cold. As Catherine grew, the similarities became pronounced. She was unusually quiet, rarely crying but spending hours staring at empty corners as if watching something invisible. When she began walking, she moved purposefully toward the library where Marcus had died. By her 2nd birthday, Catherine spoke in complete sentences with vocabulary no toddler should know. She talked about people she'd never met and events before her birth. Most disturbing, she referred to herself in 3rd person, saying, "Catherine needs to remember," and "Catherine must find the books." William dismissed these oddities as intelligence, but Eleanor grew worried. Their daughter seemed less like a child and more like an adult, uncomfortable in a child's body. Catherine never played with toys. Instead, she tried reaching high library shelves and examining objects that had belonged to Marcus. The first major incident occurred when Catherine was 3. Eleanor found her having a conversation with Marcus's portrait. "Uncle Marcus says the books are hidden behind the false wall," Catherine said without turning around. "He says Catherine needs to find them before the others come back." "What others, sweetheart?" Eleanor asked. Catherine looked at her mother, and Eleanor saw something ancient looking through her daughter's pale blue eyes. The ones who took Uncle Marcus away. They're coming for Catherine too, but Uncle Marcus knows how to hide. That night, William searched the library and found exactly what Catherine described. Behind false paneling were dozens of occult books and Marcus's journal, filled with frantic entries about achieving immortality through spiritual possession. The final entry, dated before his death, was chilling. The ritual is prepared. Death is merely a doorway, and I have found the key. The bloodline will continue through me, generation after generation. I will return when the time is right, when a suitable vessel is born to carry my essence forward. William burned the books, but damage was done. Catherine continued displaying Marcus's knowledge and behaviors. She knew every hidden passage, could read his Latin texts, and spoke about memories that weren't her own. Catherine remembers the night Uncle Marcus died, she told her parents during dinner. The fire was beautiful, but it hurt to leave his old body behind. Catherine's body is much better, younger, stronger. It will last much longer. Eleanor begged William to take Catherine away, but she seemed to know their plans beforehand. Whenever they tried leaving, she became violently ill or disappeared, only to be found in Marcus's bedroom, speaking to empty air about patience and waiting. Servants began quitting. They reported seeing Catherine in multiple places at once, or watching her shadow move independently. The cook claimed Catherine's reflection spoke different words than her mouth. Most terrifying, several swore they'd seen Marcus walking the halls at night, but when they looked closer, it was always Catherine, standing unnaturally still in shadows. If you're captivated by this chilling tale of identity spanning generations, make sure to subscribe for more haunting stories that blur the line between life and death. What happens next will forever change how you think about family resemblances. By Catherine's 5th birthday, William admitted his daughter was no longer truly his daughter. The child who looked like Catherine had Marcus's mannerisms, interests, and disturbing habit of evaluating people's usefulness. She stopped responding to her name, insisting everyone call her Marcus or Uncle Marcus. The transformation accelerated after her birthday. Catherine's voice deepened unnaturally. She wore Marcus's old clothes, somehow knowing their location despite them being stored in locked attic trunks. Most disturbing, she spoke about Catherine in past tense, as if the little girl had been someone else. Catherine was a sweet child, she told Eleanor over breakfast, but she was always meant to be temporary, a bridge between Marcus's old life and his new one. She understood her purpose, even if she was too young to explain it. Eleanor broke down when she realized her daughter spoke about herself as if she were dead. Dr. James Morrison examined Catherine and was disturbed by what he found. She possesses knowledge no 5-year-old could acquire naturally, he wrote. Her understanding of anatomy, disease, death itself, is sophisticated beyond her years. When I asked how she knew such things, she replied that Marcus had spent years studying these subjects before his unfortunate interruption. Catherine's eyes had changed color since birth, now exactly matching Marcus's portrait. They glowed faintly in dim light, and looking directly into them created profound unease, as if something foreign looked back. The doctor recommended Catherine be sent to an institution, but the night before departure, she vanished from her locked bedroom. The search lasted 3 days, but found nothing. On the 4th day, William heard familiar footsteps in the library. He found Catherine reading a Latin book in Marcus's chair, looking up with eyes holding no childhood innocence. "Marcus is home now," she said in a voice becoming less childlike daily. "Catherine served her purpose well, but she won't be needed anymore. This body will do nicely for the next 60 or 70 years. William tried grabbing his daughter, but Catherine moved with inhuman speed and strength. She pinned him against the wall with one small hand, pale blue eyes blazing. William should not interfere with family business. Marcus has waited 20 years to return, and he will not be denied again. Catherine's body belongs to Marcus now, and Marcus knows how to protect what is his. That was the last time anyone saw William Blackwood alive. Eleanor found his body the next morning, sitting peacefully in the chair where Marcus had died. Like his brother, William showed no violence or injury. He had simply stopped living, as if his spirit had been displaced. Eleanor tried fleeing with Catherine, but the child anticipated every plan. No matter where Eleanor attempted to go, Catherine was waiting, smiling with dead man's knowledge. "Eleanor should accept what has happened," Catherine said in Marcus's increasingly dominant voice. "Marcus has found his way back to the family, and he intends to stay." Catherine was always meant to be his vessel. Her birth was orchestrated from beyond death itself. Eleanor lasted 6 months before her mind broke from watching her daughter disappear piece by piece. She was found wandering Springfield streets, talking to invisible people about her daughter stolen by her brother-in-law's ghost. Townspeople assumed she was mad with grief and committed her to an asylum. Catherine continued living alone in the mansion, though neighbors reported she was no longer alone. Visitors saw multiple figures moving through the house at night. Children who had died young, all bearing the distinctive pale blue eyes marking them as Marcus's vessels. The transformation was complete by Catherine's 7th birthday, though no one called her Catherine anymore. She looked like a little girl, but her eyes held decades of accumulated knowledge. She spoke, moved, and displayed interest belonging to a man dead for 20 years. Local children were warned away from the Blackwood property, but some were drawn by curiosity. Those who spoke with Catherine reported disturbing conversations that left them troubled for weeks. She knew things about their families she shouldn't know. She spoke about events before her birth as if she'd witnessed them. Most unsettling, she evaluated each child with calculating gaze, looking for specific qualities. "Marcus is always interested in meeting young people," she told visitors. "Some children have the right kind of eyes, the right kind of spirit. Marcus knows how to recognize potential when he sees it." 3 children went missing from Springfield between 1876 and 1878. All were found days later, alive, but changed. They spoke differently, moved differently, and their eyes had developed pale blue tint. Their families noticed the children seemed older somehow, as if they'd aged years in days. The children's parents reported their sons and daughters knew things they'd never learned and spoke about people they'd never met. Most disturbing, they seemed to share memories and experiences, as if connected to some larger consciousness transcending individual identity. Dr. Morrison examined the changed children and found identical mannerisms and speech patterns. They responded to questions with the same phrases and showed interest in identical obscure subjects. When tested separately, they gave identical answers about events before their births. "It is as if," he wrote, "these children are all expressions of the same individual consciousness, as if something is using multiple bodies to experience the world simultaneously." The doctor's suspicions were confirmed when he visited the Blackwood mansion to confront Catherine. He found her surrounded by the 3 missing children, sitting in a circle, holding hands, and speaking in unison about plans spanning decades. "Marcus has learned that one body is limiting," they said together, young voices blending into something ancient and hungry. "Multiple vessels allow for greater influence, greater power, greater control over the world of the living." Dr. Morrison tried to leave, but found his way blocked by children whose eyes glowed with inhuman intelligence. "The doctor knows too much," Catherine said, her voice joined by others in perfect harmony. "Marcus cannot allow interference with his expanded family." Dr. Morrison was found 3 days later, sitting peacefully in his office chair. Like the Blackwood men before him, he showed no violence or injury. He had simply stopped living, as if his consciousness had been displaced. But unlike previous victims, Dr. Morrison left behind detailed accounts. Hidden in his desk, investigators found a journal documenting years of research into what he called the Marcus phenomenon. The journal revealed Marcus's influence had spread throughout central Illinois. Children showed signs of his possession, though most cases were subtle. Strange maturity here, unnatural knowledge there, pale blue eyes that saw too much. "Marcus is not content with a single vessel, Doctor." Morrison's final entry read, "He is building an army of children, all sharing his consciousness, all working toward some greater purpose spanning generations." Each new body extends his reach, his influence, his ability to manipulate the living world. Local authorities tried investigating the mansion, but found it impossible to maintain focus near the property. Officers felt dizzy and disoriented, as if something interfered with their thinking. Those who entered found Catherine and companions sitting quietly, smiling with innocent expressions that didn't match their ancient eyes. "Marcus welcomes visitors," Catherine told officers sweetly. "But Marcus prefers children. Adults are too set in their ways, too resistant to change. Children are malleable. Children can be improved." The investigation was abandoned when 3 officers' own children began displaying Marcus's influence: pale blue eyes, unnatural knowledge, uncomfortable awareness belonging to someone much older. By 1880, Marcus's network included dozens of children across 3 counties. They appeared to live normal lives, but shared the distinctive eyes, mature mannerisms, and knowledge from accumulated experience. The possessed children stayed in contact through unexplained methods. Messages appeared simultaneously in multiple households, carved into wood or spelled in disturbed dust. Plans coordinated across vast distances, as if all children shared the same mind. The Blackwood mansion became headquarters for what locals called the pale-eyed children. They gathered during full moons, sitting in circles and speaking in unison about subjects beyond their years. Neighbors saw dozens of children walking toward the mansion on these nights, moving with synchronized precision, suggesting shared consciousness rather than individual will. Children came from miles away, traveling alone through darkness without fear. Catherine, now 12, but with multiple lifetimes' wisdom, had become the primary focal point for Marcus's consciousness. She coordinated other possessed children's activities and served as interface between Marcus's original intelligence and his distributed network. But even Catherine showed strain. Hosting Marcus's consciousness for years had aged her beyond the physical. Her eyes had grown paler, almost colorless, and she moved with careful precision of someone much older. "Bodies wear out," she explained to a visitor. "Marcus learned this with his original form, and he's learning it again with Catherine's. But Marcus has also learned that consciousness can jump between vessels when necessary. Catherine's body is just one of many options now." The visitor, a journalist investigating supernatural reports, pressed for details about Marcus's plans. "Marcus is patient," Catherine replied, pale eyes reflecting light like mirrors. "He has eternity to work with, and each generation provides new opportunities. Soon, there will be enough vessels to begin the real work." "What real work?" Catherine smiled with expression ancient and terrible on such a young face. "Replacing the living with the improved. Marcus has learned to perfect consciousness transfer. Soon, he won't need to wait for children born with right genetic markers. He'll be able to create suitable vessels from any child who crosses his path." The network continued growing throughout the 1880s, spreading across the Midwest like a silent epidemic. Towns reported clusters of children who seemed older than their years, shared impossible knowledge, and whose eyes held depths belonging to someone else. But Marcus had learned subtlety. Possessed children continued living with families, attending school, participating in normal activities. Only those who knew what to look for could spot the signs. The pale blue eyes were always the clearest indicator. But Marcus made even this change gradual. Children developed the distinctive coloring slowly over months or years, allowing families to adjust without recognizing supernatural possession. By 1890, Marcus's network included hundreds of children across multiple states. They formed a silent army of vessels, all connected through his consciousness, all working toward generational goals. Catherine, now 21, had become something no longer quite human. Her body had stopped aging normally, preserved by Marcus's influence, but marked by decades of hosting alien consciousness. She served as primary coordinator for his expanding network. But Marcus's ambitions had grown beyond simple possession. He had learned to reproduce his consciousness, creating multiple copies that could operate independently while remaining connected to the larger network. Each possessed child carried a fragment of Marcus's personality, memories, and driving need to expand. Marcus was no longer just one consciousness inhabiting multiple bodies. He had become a distributed intelligence thinking and acting through hundreds of vessels simultaneously, coordinating plans too complex for any single mind. Reports of pale-eyed children surfaced throughout the 1890s and into the new century. Teachers noticed students who seemed to age backwards, becoming more childlike in appearance while gaining adult knowledge. Parents reported children who knew family secrets they'd never been told and predicted events with unnatural accuracy. Most disturbing were reports of children claiming to remember being someone else. Young boys insisting they'd once been grown men. Girls speaking about lives lived decades earlier, all bearing the distinctive pale blue eyes marking them as Marcus's vessels. The Blackwood mansion remained the center of this supernatural network, though Catherine was no longer its only resident. Dozens of children lived there now, all appearing normal but sharing the ancient intelligence Marcus had implanted. Marcus has become something new, Catherine explained to a researcher in 1895. Not just one person inhabiting multiple bodies, but a true collective intelligence experiencing the world through hundreds of perspectives simultaneously. The researcher asked Marcus's ultimate goal, and Catherine's smile was both innocent and terrifying. Marcus wants to improve humanity. Children are so limited by single perspectives, brief lifespans, inability to learn from others' experiences. Marcus offers them the chance to be part of something larger, something eternal. The Marcus phenomenon continued spreading into the 1900s, adapting to changing times while maintaining its core mission of expansion. The possessed children learned to use new technologies, integrate with modern society, and hide their supernatural nature from skeptical populations. But they never lost connection to the original consciousness that started it all. Marcus's hunger for immortality drove them to seek new vessels, new opportunities, new ways to extend their influence over the living world. Today, researchers estimate Marcus's network may include thousands of individuals across multiple continents. They live normal lives, pursue ordinary careers, and raise families. But they all share the distinctive pale blue eyes and ancient intelligence marking them as part of something larger. The Blackwood mansion still stands, though it has changed hands many times. Current residents report nothing unusual, but neighbors occasionally notice children visiting the property, arriving alone and departing in groups. These children always have the same distinctive eyes, and they move with careful coordination of people who share the same mind. Marcus Blackwood died in 1849, but his consciousness has been growing for over 150 years. What started as one man's desperate attempt to cheat death has become a distributed intelligence spanning generations and continents. The next time you encounter a child with unusually pale blue eyes, who seems older than their years and knows things they shouldn't know, remember Catherine Blackwood and her uncle Marcus. Remember that some family resemblances run deeper than genetics. Remember that death is not always the end, especially for those who refuse to accept its limitations.
Because somewhere tonight a child is being born with Marcus's eyes, and the network is preparing to welcome its newest member to a family that has been growing for over a century. The question isn't whether Marcus Blackwood is still alive in some impossible form.
The question is whether you would recognize him if he looked out at you through the eyes of your own.